A little over a week ago, I published a video which, amongst other things, highlighted a new mod that nearly entirely fixed every annoyance PC players have had with how multiplayer matchmaking works in Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak, and I thought that'd be it. The mod would continue to be tweaked and fine-tuned over time, and the players on PC would at least have an option to make multiplayer work a ton smoother and more reliably than it does by default, by giving them a much larger selection of the player base to match with as the mod smashes past the built-in and stupid region locking. But this is not a direct follow-up to that mod. In this video, I've got another option for you. A little bit off to the left side, and not true multiplayer at all, really, but it modifies a fun new gameplay mechanic Sunbreak introduced in a way that massively expands its utility and gives you kind of multiplayer. And I think this could be another one of those must-have mods for PC players because it works really, really well. Hello again, I am Blunty, and just before I dive into that proper, there's a less drastic and smaller scale mod that I do want to point out too. Now, just yesterday, I tweeted out a video from a Monster Hunter specialist channel I follow, Team Darkside. And in said tweet I said, "There are many things about the gameplay and UX and UI I enjoy more in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak over Monster Hunter World, but the often exquisite attention to small details and rich environmental character is not one of them." Team Darkside, you see, have published a video with a whole bunch of side-by-side comparisons of various examples of World's vastly superior attention to detail. Most of it doesn't actually affect gameplay at all, but it, without question, does leave Sunbreak looking a little flatter when it comes to the feeling of a living, breathing world. And that is indeed one of the more often cited criticisms that World players, people who came on board with World especially, Fifth Fleeters as they're called in the Monster Hunter community, have leveled at Sunbreak of just feeling a bit emptier and more quote-unquote dead than World felt. I don't agree entirely with them on that, but they do have a point, it's fair to say. Now, Team Darkside's whole video is presented without commentary at all, and, doesn't lay any judgment one way or the other, and simply lets the apples-to-apples comparisons speak for themselves. I'll link it in the down below and in a pinned comment to make it easy to find, because a lot of work went into it, and it's well worth a full watch, in my opinion. But one of the comparisons closer to the end, and one of the more obvious ones, basically all of the player base who've even briefly played World before coming to Rise inescapably noticed the food. The food at the canteen and the animations that go with it when you gobble it up. Now, Dango is delicious, sure, and of course mechanically it works much the same way as World's meals do, activating various buffs and whatnot, so who really cares what it looks like when it's thrown down in front of you? Most of us skip that animation quite a lot anyway, don't we? But there's no one out there who can earnestly say that Rise's canteen is nearly as mouth-wateringly exquisitely done as World's. And in fact, speaking personally, I didn't skip World's preparation and serving animations nearly as often as I do in Rise and Sunbreak. To that end, a funny little mod that doesn't entirely rectify this, but at least pokes a bit of fun at eating rice dumplings at every single meal that always look identical, and the animation is always identical. The only thing that changes is the colour of the balls on the sticks. So it switches out all the dango for various chunks of delicious, moist, well-seared meat. Or if you're vegetarian, feel free to imagine it as tofu or some plant-based imitation meat. But it's meat. I know it, you know it, we all know it. It's meat. Flesh. Tasty, tasty flesh. And you can almost smell that rich, smoky aroma. And because tea is not usually drank with steak, for example, they've switched out the drink for Coca-Cola. Hot, steaming Coca-Cola, which doesn't seem quite as appetizing, frankly, and I worry a little bit that the Coca-Cola company, being as big as they are going to come after this mod and send a cease and desist because using their trademark without permission, as this mod almost certainly does, well, their lawyers are kind of notorious for not tolerating that. They might ignore it, they might not, but it's probably going to have to change at some point if someone from Coke actually notices that, because yeah, mod makers don't use other people's trademarks like this, especially massive companies like Coca-Cola. You're just asking for trouble, really. Whatever. It's a bit of fun, and after what by now must be at least 1,500 hours in game for me across both PC and Switch versions, I'm ready for a break from eating dango at every meal, so I'm keeping this mod installed, if just for a slight amount of variety. Now then, that multiplayer mod. It's actually kind of fake multiplayer, as I alluded to earlier. What it does is take the follower questing system and open up all the followers to come with you on nearly any and every quest in the game. For what should be obvious reasons, you can't take them with you to other multiplayer hunts with real people, so it's limited to solo-only hunts. And there are some limitations and bugs if you want to take them with you into arena quests, but you know, the mod page details that specifically. Now, the follower quests, as designed in the game, is a small subset of specific quests that progressively unlock as you play through them, and if you've not dived into them much yet, they're actually really good. And the AI companions, your fellow hunters from the cast of characters you interact with throughout the core story progression and in the town and whatnot, is remarkably capable. Not so dumb as they're more of a hindrance than a help, as is the case for so many games with AI partners out there. Oh my god. But this game kind of gets it right, and they're not so overpowered that it starts sucking all the fun and challenge out. Although, hold on to that thought, because oh my word, you can just break the game with this mod in a truly hilarious way. We'll circle back to that. But now, with this mod, you can play a kind of pseudo-multiplayer without having to matchmake with real people, which also means you can have a fake multiplayer experience even when offline. And that's an interesting option to have in your pocket. You can select which of your followers to bring along, how many of them to bring, and which weapon type from their standard selection that they'll be equipped with, and it works remarkably seamlessly. Now, as the normal quests aren't designed for this, they'll still be nearly as hard as they usually would be, as by default the followers don't actually put out as much damage as a real player does. The quest designed for them does account for that, normal quests do not, but just having an extra hunter on the field to split the monster's attention, to activate traps and hunting helpers and the like, and even occasionally pop a wide-range heal for you, does make an appreciable difference to how the hunt feels and flows, and it makes the hunt feel just a bit more dynamic and unpredictable than a normal solo hunt would. However, the mod also opens up the ability to adjust how hunts are balanced. You can in fact make the monster's HP pools adjust exactly as they would for real multiplayer, in effect making the quest harder still, for those of you who like a bit more challenge. And more than that though, you've got pretty fine-grained control over the damage, the part break damage, and the stun damage multipliers independently. You can manually adjust the baseline HP pool, and you can do the same for the monsters, adjusting their HP scaling manually, and things like their resistance thresholds to blights and elementals and whatnot. So what happens if you make the monster as squishy as possible and ramp your whole team of 4 other hunters up to superhuman level? Oh, that's right, you heard me. 4 other hunters, because with this mod, you are not limited to 4 hunters in total. You can actually have 5, because you can bring 4 followers and yourself. And Monster Hunter aficionados, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is the very first time, at least outside of the spin-off MMO-style Monster Hunter games, that more than 4 hunters have even been allowed to come on a hunt. In fact, somewhere along the way, there is some lore buried in at least a couple of the games that explains why there is only ever a limit of 4 hunters on a hunt. So, Squishy Monster, maxed out 5-person hunt, against a highest tier 4-star anomaly hunt for an afflicted Goss Harag. Let's just say my friends can hold their own just fine. I did have to trigger the hunt start myself, as the followers, well, they follow your lead of course. They won't attack a monster unless you're ready to attack, so they wait for you to do it first. And at one point in the hunt, I did have to fling off a kunai to make the team actively re-engage the monster, but aside from that, I spent the whole hunt utterly passive, just running around and watching them go to work. Sometimes I had to roll out of the way if a monster decided to target me with an attack or whatnot, but otherwise leaving the team to handle it all themselves, which they did. Handily. In fact, they smacked that afflicted Goss Harag around like a rented mule. The first part break came within 30 seconds of the fight starting, and from then on in it was just broken parts and stuns and flinches and lockdowns and exhausts in a long chain of utter, embarrassingly destructive force. Goss didn't even have a chance to zone even once, in fact. As a matter of fact, it was all over in about 6 minutes from first hit to carvable lump of parts on the ground. So, It's pretty overpowered if you abuse this mod to its fullest abusable extent. I'd even go so far as to call it lazy, if not flat out cheating. But as it is a single player only experience, you are not screwing over other real hunters by doing this. So if you are feeling like a huge pussy, too lazy or too shit at the game to farm properly, this could be a pretty brain off way to farm up some monster parts or grind out some monster rank points. I don't recommend or condone doing it that way. I think it's weak and effectively cheating, really. But it can be done, so it deserves mentioning. Now, personally, I think I'll keep the mod installed as it's fun and handy if I'm struggling to matchmake on a specific hunt I'm trying to farm, which does happen from time to time, even with that other matchmaking mod installed. And sometimes I don't want to solo hunt for whatever reason. And more often than not, I don't really want to solo hunt. I do find multiplayer much more fun in this game. I can solo if I need to, that's fine, but I would prefer not to, and this gives me an option to not to if the, main multiplayer isn't doing the trick. But for my uses, I will be turning the scaling back down to defaults and maybe only take 1, maybe 2 followers along instead of a whole overflow team of 4 because, well, it's just no fun otherwise. Funny, but not fun becomes a little bit too easy. And people do not play Monster Hunter because it's an easy game. So thanks for watching. Thank you as always to the followers scrolling up above there. I hope you're having a lovely time with Sunbreak. And as I record, I'm about 12 hours away from the announcement being made of the details of the first major title update, bringing with it a few new monsters and weapons and new way to upgrade your weapons and stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that too. Thanks for watching. I am Bloody, and I'll catch you next time.